Mrs. Sebastian. Oh no, Miss Alara, according to the agreement, you have two choices. The lawyer's icy voice echoed in the empty conference room, scraping against my eardrums like a dull knife. 100 million in compensation, plus 3 debt-free properties in the most prosperous area of the city center, all in your individual name. The amount of money and the value of the properties were both a little more than I had expected. Perhaps his conscience was bothering him? 2. Custody of Owen. Of course, if you choose custody, the corresponding financial compensation will be drastically reduced. He pushed up the gold-rimmed glasses on his nose, his tone flat, as if announcing today's specials at a supermarket. Sebastian, the man who would legally soon be my ex-husband, sat expressionlessly at the head of the table, rolling the cigarette between his fingers, but never lighting it. The cold cedar cologne on him, after 6 years, was still so familiar, and so distant. Beside him, nestled delicately, was Cora, dressed particularly brightly today, the corners of her eyes and eyebrows full of unconcealable, victorious delight. Even her perfume was a few degrees stronger than usual, filling the entire room with an undeniable sense of possession. And on the imported calfskin sofa not far away, my 5-year-old son Owen was sobbing, his small shoulders shaking, his red eyes staring intently at me, filled with terror and incomprehension. Mommy, don't go. That sound, as thin as a mosquito's hum, carrying a beast-like whimper, was like countless tiny needles, densely pricking at my heart, painful, but bearable. I took a deep breath, then slowly exhaled, suppressing the complex emotions surging in my chest. I've endured 6 years, what's one more moment? I choose the money. 3 words, I said crisply, without the slightest hesitation. I expected him to ask this, so I was already prepared with an answer. The air instantly solidified. The nib of the pen scratched across the expensive divorce agreement, making a harsh shush sound, infinitely magnified in the silence. The smile on Cora's lips deepened. She couldn't even successfully hide it. She gently raised her hand and patted Sebastian's arm in a feigned gesture of concern, saying softly, "Sebastian, look, Alara is still so rational. Owen will definitely be happier with us than with her." My son's crying grew louder, like an abandoned kitten, each sound tugging at my nerves. "Mommy, don't you want me anymore? Mommy, wah. I'll be good in the future. Mommy." Owen tried to break free from the arms of the nearby servant, stumbling as he tried to lunge forward, his thin arms flailing wildly. My fingertips were icy, gripping the expensive signing pen tightly, fine sweat beading in my palms, not from fear, but from the uncontainable, exhilarating anticipation of release. Sebastian finally spoke, his usual low and cold voice carrying a hint of something I couldn't understand. Weariness? Or astonishment? "Alara, have you thought it through carefully? Owen is, after all, your flesh and blood, carried for 10 months. As he said this, he finally shifted his gaze from the documents to my face, his eyes deep, as if trying to see through my facade. I didn't look into his eyes, afraid I would inadvertently reveal my true emotions. I lowered my head, my gaze falling on my son, clutching at my leg, crying hoarsely. That small face, it looks so much like me. My heart still aches. But I steeled myself, forced myself to harden my heart, reached out, and slowly pushed him away. "Sebastian, didn't you always say that for a money-loving woman like me, nothing is more important than money?" I raised my eyes and calmly met his gaze. "Now, I'm just fulfilling your judgment. Are you disappointed?" Owen staggered from my push and fell straight to the ground, stunned, his little face covered in crystal tears, his eyes filled with disbelief and despair at the collapse of his world. I stood up abruptly and signed my name, Alara, at the end of the agreement with a neat flourish, carrying an unprecedented sense of relief. I picked up my copy of the agreement, folded it neatly, and put it in the crocodile skin handbag I had prepared in advance. "Pleasure doing business with you. Oh no, happy divorce." I gave Sebastian and Cora a formulaic smile, then turned and walked towards the door without looking back. Stepping out of the heavy oak doors of the law firm, the early summer sun poured down, a little dazzling. I narrowed my eyes and took a deep breath of the free and fiery air of the city. 6 years in a gilded cage, 6 years of forbearance and calculation. Finally, today Alara, am completely free. I just wonder, Sebastian, when you realize that what you've lost is not just a sensible and money-loving ex-wife, a tool that can help you manage the home front, so you can focus on working hard, or rather, focus on finding your white moonlight. Will you feel even a hint of regret? But that has nothing to do with me anymore. I have more important things to do, justice for my mother, the Yu family's business, my own future. Everything is just beginning. Looking back 6 years ago, the Yu family's capital chain broke, on the verge of bankruptcy. My greedy and patriarchal father, Victor, that old man who always said that daughters were used for marriage to exchange for benefits, used my mother's life-saving money and the notice of her critical condition, both together, to force me, this only commodity. Elara, Dad knows you're being wronged. But now, only you can save the Yu family, only you can save your mother. He grabbed my hand, tears streaming down his face, acting so sincerely. Chen family's young master Sebastian, his family background, character, and ability are all top-notch. You won't suffer if you marry him. As long as our two families are united by marriage, and the Chen family invests, the Yu family can be resurrected, and your mother's imported medicine will have a chance. He spoke righteously, as if I were the savior of the Yu family, a great benefactor who moved heaven with my filial piety. My mother was also a well-known female entrepreneur back then, but after marrying my father, she was gradually schemed against by him. Her businesses, shares, and even her dowry were all managed on her behalf, under various pretexts, and finally, everything was eaten away. Now she is critically ill, lying in the ICU, and the daily expenses are astronomical. I looked at my mother lying on the hospital bed, surrounded by various instruments, so weak that only a skeleton remained, her cloudy eyes full of despair and unwillingness, pulling my hand, saying weakly, Elara, daughter, never, never, for me. Sacrifice yourself. It's not worth it. Cough, cough. Every word was filled with blood and tears. What could I do? Could I watch my mother die in hatred because she couldn't afford treatment? I agreed. The condition was that 15% of the shares of the Yu Group must be transferred to my name, and that I would have the power to independently handle some affairs of the family business after the marriage, especially those problematic overseas projects that my father had made a mess of. Inside, there was my mother's former hard work. Victor's face twitched in pain, but in order to climb the big tree of the Chen family, he gritted his teeth and agreed. So I, Elara, overnight, became the Chen family's young mistress, envied by everyone in High City, and also became the gold digger in everyone's eyes, selling herself to climb the social ladder. On the wedding night, after the grand wedding, Sebastian was drunk. Returning to the wedding room, smelling strongly of alcohol, he didn't even look at me properly, just mumbled repeatedly, calling out a deeply unforgettable name. Cora? Cora. My Cora. Where are you? In the darkness, he roughly pressed me under him, mistaking me for the white moonlight he longed for. My eyes were open, my nails digging deeply into my palms from the force. The stinging sensation kept me barely conscious. The custom-made wall clock ticked, as if ruthlessly mocking this absurd marriage, mocking me, this Mrs. Sebastian in name only. I quietly pressed the record button on my phone, recording his drunken words, his rudeness, exactly as they were. These pieces of evidence, stained with humiliation, would become my most powerful weapons in the future. A month later, looking at the 2 bright red lines on the pregnancy test stick, I was surprisingly calm. This child was an important part of my plan. He was the eldest grandson, one of the Chen family's rightful heir candidates, and also an important bargaining chip for me to legally obtain more resources and future freedom of action in this marriage of convenience. I handed the pregnancy test to Sebastian. He just glanced at it lightly, his eyes without the joy of becoming a father for the first time, only a routine calmness. Since you're pregnant, give birth to it. The Chen family needs an heir. Heir. What cold, icy words. For 10 months, he never asked about the suffering of morning sickness or the heaviness of my body. I successfully gave birth to Owen, a beautiful and healthy boy, perhaps because of the blood connection. When I saw that soft, glutinous little thing, and felt his complete dependence on me, the heart that had been frozen by calculations and hatred couldn't help but soften a bit. The Chen family was finally more polite to me. After all, the mother depended on her son. Old Master Chun and Old Madam Chun hugged their eldest grandson, smiling from ear to ear. But these were just appearances. I didn't wallow in the comfortable life of a wealthy daughter-in-law. Using the glittering title of Mrs. Sebastian as a cover, I used the Chun family's connections and resources to secretly handle those problematic cooperative projects of the family business that Victor had dumped on me, especially those related to my mother's former business. I wanted to sort them out one by one, turning the losses into profits, and finding ways to recover what had been seized. In those years, during the day, I was the gentle and virtuous Mrs. Sebastian, surrounded by servants, drinking afternoon tea and getting spa treatments, always respectful and considerate to Sebastian, never arguing or making a fuss. At night, the study light was often on until late at night. I was transformed into a CEO Ilera, analyzing data and strategizing in front of the computer screen. I had to be strong. I had to take control of my own destiny. For my mother, who had suffered so much, and for my own future, so that I would no longer be at anyone's mercy. At the same time, I was secretly cultivating my own power, gathering my mother's old subordinates, and gradually eroding Victor's control over the company. Owen gradually grew up, learned to walk, and would vaguely call mommy. The time he had a high fever, I was so anxious that I didn't close my eyes for 3 days and 3 nights, personally holding him to cool him down physically, feeding him water and medicine, my eyes bloodshot. Sebastian came back from the company, only stood at the door and glanced at him, faintly instructing the nanny beside him. Take good care of young Master Owen. Don't let the mistress overwork herself, affecting her health, delaying her social life. His words, like a bucket of ice water, extinguished the last trace of warmth in my heart from head to toe. Yes, in his eyes I was first and foremost the face of the Chun family, a tool that could help him with social engagements, and secondly, Owen's mother. My heart was completely cold at that moment, but my mind was clearer than ever. My plan had to be accelerated. I thought that such days would continue under my control, until I was ready for all the retreats, and recovered everything that belonged to my mother and me. Beneath the calm surface, there were surging undercurrents. Until Cora, the white moonlight that Sebastian had engraved on his heart, returned to the country in a high-profile manner after disappearing for 5 years. Cora, Sebastian's first love, whom he longed for but could not obtain. Back then, because her family background was ordinary, unworthy of the wealthy Chun family, Sebastian's mother strongly intervened, giving her a sum of money and sending her abroad for advanced studies. Now 5 years later, she has transformed into a young European painter with a small reputation, coated with a halo of artistic talent. As soon as she returned to China, the media reported extensively, with eye-catching and ambiguous headlines. Childhood sweethearts reunite after 5 years. Will talented men and beautiful women continue their love story? The accompanying picture was of Sebastian personally picking her up at the airport, his usually cold face carrying a clearly visible gentle smile. It was really dazzling. I, the legitimate Mrs. Sebastian, in these reports, wasn't even given the name to mention. I knew the show was about to begin. My first official face-to-face confrontation with Cora was at the annual top-tier charity gala in High City. She wore a limited edition haute couture dress that Sebastian had specially airlifted from Paris. Her makeup was exquisite and elegant, holding Sebastian's arm, speaking and laughing charmingly, looking like a hostess, accepting the flattery and scrutiny of the people around her. And I, the legitimate Mrs. Sebastian, although also dressed up carefully, wearing valuable jewelry taken from the Chun family's safe, looked like a superfluous and awkward background. Halfway through the gala, Cora, holding a glass of scarlet red wine, walked gracefully to me, a just right surprise and intimacy on her face. Oh my, this must be Ilera. Brother Sebastian used to mention you to me when he was abroad, said that you are gentle and virtuous, managing the house in an orderly manner, and that you are his most capable assistant. Her voice was delicate, every word seemed to be coated with honey, but it also revealed a sense of asserting sovereignty. Before I could open my mouth, her wrist twisted, and accidentally, half a glass of expensive burgundy red wine was mostly spilled on the ivory white mermaid dress skirt that I had just put on, leaving an eye-catching mess. Ah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Ilera. Look at me, I'm so clumsy. I'm so sorry. She pretended to scream in panic, but a flash of triumphant, provocative light flashed quickly in her eyes. The surrounding guests immediately looked over, a subtle atmosphere of gossip filling the air, and whispers rose and fell. Oh dear, the ex and the current wife on the same stage, it's easy for things to happen. I heard that Chenzong and this Ms. Cora were madly in love before the wedding. Looks like Mrs. Sebastian's days are going to be difficult from now on. I took a deep breath and elegantly took a clean napkin from the waiter's tray beside me, slowly and calmly wiping the wine stains on my skirt, my movements unhurried and graceful. Then, I raised my head and gave Cora a shallow but meaningful smile. It's okay, Miss Cora. After all, sitting in the position of Mrs. Sebastian for too long, you're bound to encounter one or two careless people who try to splash some dirt and grab some attention. You get used to it. The sweet smile on Cora's face instantly froze, and the color drained from her exquisite face. She probably didn't expect that I, Mrs. Sebastian, who was always seen as gentle and tolerant, would retaliate so ruthlessly in public. Just as the atmosphere fell into an awkward standstill, Sebastian walked over in time, frowning unhappily, and naturally protected Cora behind him, his tone carrying obvious favoritism and a hint of warning. Alara, Cora's health has always been poor. She was just careless just now, it wasn't intentional. Why do you have to speak so barbed and aggressively? I looked at his protective and nervous appearance, laughing coldly inside. What a good husband I have. Oh, is that so? I raised an eyebrow. Since Chenzong is so concerned about Ms. Cora, why not just take Ms. Cora to change into some clean clothes and check if she's, accidentally, hurt anywhere? So that it doesn't spread that our Chen family isn't hospitable and neglects Ms. Cora, this honored guest. Sebastian's expression became even more unpleasant. He probably also heard the sarcasm in my words. He gave me a deep look, then grabbed the pale Cora and turned to leave. The onlookers' gazes were even more meaningful. I adjusted my slightly disheveled skirt, still maintaining a proper smile, as if the small storm just now had nothing to do with me. Fine, Sebastian, Cora, you can be as affectionate and harmonious as you like. I'll wait and see what kind of touching drama you two unfortunate lovers can put on. Owen's 5th birthday party became Cora's personal show. She attended brazenly as a longtime friend of Jingchuan, and godmother of the child, wearing a dress more gorgeous than the hostess me, and circulating among the guests all evening, dancing socially and blocking a lot of alcohol for Sebastian. The birthday gift she gave to Owen was the latest model of an expensive smart remote-controlled simulated sports car, which made Owen smile brightly. He clung to her all night, calling her Aunt Cora is so beautiful, and Aunt Cora is the best. The cashmere scarf I knitted for Owen with my own hands, and the parent-child growth memorial album I spent several nights making were casually thrown aside by him, unattended. When the birthday candles were lit, Cora stood next to Owen, and even took the initiative to help him put on his birthday hat, instead of me, and then smiled sweetly at Owen, her voice sickeningly sweet. Owen, my little birthday star. Why don't you call me Cora Mommy from now on? Cora Mommy will love you like your own mommy. Owen was still young, and didn't understand the twists and turns of the adult world. He nodded innocently and called out in a childish voice. Okay, Cora Mommy. Sebastian stood beside them, looking at this warm and harmonious scene, his face full of indulgence and tenderness that he had never shown me. At that moment, I knew very clearly that this marriage, which was already on the verge of collapse, was really coming to an end. Cora's ambition was already obvious. Sebastian's attitude was also self-evident. All I needed was the most suitable opportunity to maximize my interests and completely escape this quagmire, and a tipping point sufficient to detonate all the contradictions. And this tipping point soon came. The real fuse came so unexpectedly, yet it felt like fate. At that time, I was working several sleepless nights in a row for a silk clothing factory that was on the verge of bankruptcy, under the command of my mother's old subordinate. It had been my mother's pride, and it was the most successful industry she had independently operated before Victor schemed against her. I had to pull it out of the quagmire. Finally, with accurate market judgment and unremitting efforts, I successfully brought back a huge overseas luxury brand OEM order, bringing the factory back to life. After signing the contract and returning to China, the itinerary was tight, and the flight was unfortunately delayed for several hours. When I landed in Haicheng, it was already late at night, and I happened to encounter a heavy downpour. I was soaked to the bone, dragging my exhausted body and heavy suitcase, and waited outside the airport for nearly an hour before finally getting a taxi. When I returned to the brightly lit Chen family villa, I was almost in a state of utter disarray. Pushing open the heavy carved gate, the central heating in the living room was warm and welcoming, as if it were a different world from the storm outside. Cora was wearing a soft and comfortable imported cashmere home outfit. Although she wasn't wearing any makeup, her hairstyle was meticulous. She was holding my son Owen, sitting intimately on the soft wool carpet, holding a beautifully produced English original pop-up picture book in her hand, and telling him a story in her unique, gentle, and sweet voice. Owen listened with relish, nodding his little head and giggling from time to time. The scene was as warm as a carefully painted oil painting, showing maternal love and filial piety, and a peaceful and beautiful life. However, in this painting, there was no place for me, the legitimate mother. Mommy. Owen, with his sharp eyes, was the first to spot me, and a happy smile immediately bloomed on his face. He was just about to struggle out of Cora's arms and rush towards me. Cora reacted quickly, seemingly unintentionally tightening her arms and pulling Owen closer to her. Then she raised her head and gave me an impeccable smile, even with a hint of concern, and said softly to Owen, "Owen, be good. Look, Mommy just came back from outside, ran so far. She must be very tired and she might have picked up some dust. Let's let Mommy go change into some clean clothes and rest well, okay?" Her voice was so gentle, so considerate, but it seemed to be implying something imperceptibly. Owen indeed stopped his movements to get up. He turned his head and carefully looked me up and down. I had just been in a downpour, my hair was wet and stuck to my forehead and cheeks, and my hair was still dripping water. The expensive coat on my body was also stained with a lot of mud and rainwater, and the high heels on my feet were even more tattered. The whole person looked less than glamorous. The little guy frowned his delicate little eyebrows, and a hint of hesitation and disgust flashed in his eyes. "Mum," he pouted and muttered softly, "you have a heavy smell on you, and mud. Dirty. Don't touch me, Owen doesn't like it." The words of a child are without restraint, but every word pierced the heart. That soft and glutinous voice was now like the sharpest ice pick, ruthlessly and accurately piercing my heart, which was already riddled with holes. I felt like I was instantly thrown into an ice cellar, and there was an icy chill from head to toe. My internal organs felt as if they were being clenched tightly by an invisible big hand, the pain almost making me unable to breathe. But on my face, I still tried to maintain calmness, and even squeezed out a smile that was uglier than crying. "Okay, Owen, be good. Mommy will go take a bath and change into some clean clothes, and I'll come play with you later." I turned around and walked upstairs step by step, as if stepping on cotton, each step weighing 1,000 pounds. Behind me, I faintly heard Cora's even gentler coaxing, and Owen's gradually relieved laughter. Entering the bathroom, looking at the pale-faced, haggard woman with deep red blood streaks and exhaustion in her eyes in the mirror, I almost couldn't recognize myself. Is this my Alara's, ending after 6 years of marriage into a wealthy family? Even my own son is starting to dislike me. I told myself, "Alara, hold on, they forced you to do this. Sooner or later, I will get back this debt with interest." That night, I didn't stay in the study to deal with official business as usual. Instead, I broke the pattern and made an appointment with my private legal team after dinner. Calmly, I began to secretly consult on every detail about divorce agreements, property division, child visitation rights allocation, and how to maximize the preservation of my personal assets and rights. For the freedom of my later life, to completely get rid of this decaying cage, to take back everything that belongs to me and my mother. Now every step I take must be more accurate and ruthless than ever before. Late at night, I tossed and turned, unable to fall asleep. Vaguely, I heard a low, suppressed sob from Owen's room next door, seemingly mixed with blurry mumbling. My heart jumped. I quietly put on my coat, barefoot, like a ghost, and walked to Owen's door, wanting to see if he was having another nightmare through the crack in the door. As soon as I reached the door, I clearly heard his tearful mumbling with a heavy nasal tone, each sound like a small hammer hitting my heart. "Woo. Aunt Cora. Cora, Mommy. I'm scared. Mommy, is she going to abandon me?" She was so fierce today. Woo. I don't want mommy. I want Cora mommy. My feet felt like they were instantly filled with lead, unable to move forward even a bit. I covered my mouth tightly to prevent myself from crying out. At that moment, I realized with absolute clarity that Cora's infiltration and brainwashing of my son was deeper and more terrifying than I had imagined. Owen, perhaps, had long been not completely mine without me knowing. Never mind. That's fine too. Less attachment means more determination. I will no longer have any worries or reluctance. It's time for this drama to end. Cora soon used the high-sounding reason of feeling unwell and needing to rest and recuperate, and also wanting to spend more time with Owen to help Jingchuan share the pressure of taking care of the family, to brazenly and formally move into the guest room next to the Chun family's master bedroom. That guest room was in a prime location, with the best lighting and an open view, facing the meticulously manicured rose garden in the backyard. Her intentions are obvious to everyone. She began to intensify her assertion of her hostess status in front of me, implying to the opportunistic servants in the family that they should create various harmless little troubles for me, and even began to recklessly interfere in the major and minor affairs of the home, from the drafting of the dinner menu to the replacement of the flowers in the main house, and even the decorations in my study that I was used to. She had to kindly help me rearrange them, claiming, "Sister, it's better feng shui this way, and it's also more cozy." I watched coldly, letting her act up. The more impatient she was, the easier it was to reveal her true colors. An even more outrageous thing happened to the plan I had spent several sleepless nights working on for an important charitable foundation project. The next morning was the key proposal meeting, and this plan was related to whether a considerable amount of money could be raised for underprivileged girls in mountainous areas. Just as I was checking and verifying the last page of data overnight, preparing to print and bind it, Cora walked in leisurely with a steaming cup of imported Blue Mountain coffee that she said she had brewed herself for me. "Sister Alara, you must be very tired from working so hard, right? Quickly drink a cup of coffee to refresh yourself. Be careful not to ruin your health. Sebastian Gu will feel sorry for you." She handed the coffee to me, her tone as gentle as water. Just as I was about to reach out to take it, she flicked her wrist, and her body staggered inadvertently. The entire cup of scalding coffee was spilled, accurately and without deviation, all over the plan that I had spread out on the table, which was the culmination of my countless efforts. The white A4 paper was instantly stained beyond recognition by the brown coffee liquid. The ink ran, the handwriting was blurred, and it exuded a sickeningly sweet aroma. "Oh dear. Sister Alara. I'm so sorry. Look at my hand. Why is it so unsteady? I really didn't mean to. Don't be angry." She apologized repeatedly, her tone full of exaggerated panic and self-blame, but under her lowered eyelids, a trace of undisguised triumph and provocation flashed quickly in her seemingly innocent eyes. I stared fixedly at the plan that had been almost completely destroyed, then raised my head and looked coldly at her pitiful face, trying to suppress the raging anger in my chest. "Cora, what exactly do you want to do? Was that intentional?" This was not the first time she had provoked me with such clumsy tricks. Her eyes immediately turned red, and she was on the verge of tears, as if she had suffered a great grievance. She turned around and stumbled off to Sebastian, who was dealing with official business in the study, to complain. "Sebastian Gu. Woo. I just wanted to kindly help Alara Jie share the pressure, and send her a cup of coffee to refresh her. I didn't expect. I accidentally knocked it over and stained her files. She said I did it on purpose. And she was fierce to me. Woo. Sebastian Gu, I really didn't mean to. How could I do such a thing?" Sebastian quickly walked in with a gloomy face. Seeing the plan scattered on the ground and Cora's tearful appearance, his brows immediately furrowed tightly. He didn't even ask for the full story before harshly questioning me. "Alara, what madness are you up to now? Cora has always been delicate and kind-hearted. She's just trying to help you. If you have any grievances, take it out on me. Why must you repeatedly make things difficult for a sick woman?" His indiscriminate, preposterous accusation made me tremble with anger, almost wanting to laugh out loud. "Sebastian, are you blind? Or has your heart already drifted to the Pacific? She's the one. Cora deliberately ruined my hard work. In your eyes am I so unbearable, so prone to making trouble, so incapable of tolerating a kind and innocent white moonlight? He looked at me coldly, his eyes filled with disappointment and disgust, his tone icily devoid of warmth. Alara, I truly don't understand you anymore. You used to be so sensible, so reasonable, knowing what to say and what to overlook. What will it take for you to stop? Please don't disappoint me any further, okay? Sensible? Reasonable? Overlook things. Screw being sensible. Screw being reasonable. I'm done serving you. I abruptly pulled out a stack of pre-prepared photos and a black recorder from my desk drawer, slamming them heavily onto his massive mahogany desk, creating a dull thud. My voice was icy and piercing, carrying pent-up rage and determination. These. Sebastian, take a good look. Is this evidence enough to completely disappoint you? Is it enough for you to see the true face of your kind and innocent Ms. Cora? The photos were filled with compromising images of Sebastian and Cora in various public and private settings, behaving intimately, even embracing and kissing. The scenes ranged from the luxurious suites of five-star hotels to the decks of private yachts, to the secluded booths of upscale restaurants, all in high definition. And the black recorder clearly captured him, on our wedding night, in front of his newlywed wife, drunkenly calling out Cora's name, uttering disgusting, nauseating endearments. It also contained the helpless and desperate cries for mercy from when he mistook me for someone else, and treated me roughly years ago, as well as Cora's malicious words of slander, and attempts to sow discord between us in different situations. Sebastian's face, upon seeing the photos and hearing the recordings, turned from black to green, from green to white, and finally to a deathly pale gray, the veins on his forehead popping out. He looked at the irrefutable evidence in disbelief, then suddenly looked up at me, his expression complicated, his lips moving as if he wanted to explain something, but he couldn't utter a single word. Cora was already terrified, her face drained of color, trembling as she pointed at me and screamed incoherently. You're secretly taking pictures. You're invading privacy. Sebastian, don't believe her. These are all fakes. She wants to frame me. She's jealous of us. Miss Cora jealous? I scoffed, looking at her flustered and pathetic state, finding it both ridiculous and sad. What is there about you that I, Alara, would be jealous of? Your family background? Your talent? Or is it your face so adept at twisting the truth? Sebastian. I ignored the speechless Cora, turning my gaze once more to the man, his fists clenched, struggling to control his emotions, my voice even and devoid of emotion, but carrying an undeniable resolution. Now that things have come to this, I believe there's no longer any love or trust between us as husband and wife. Let's discuss the terms of the divorce. Pausing for a moment, as if suddenly remembering something, a cold, almost vengeful smile curved my lips as I added. Oh right, I forgot to tell you one small thing. That AI artificial intelligence chip core technology research and development project, the one your company's board of directors has been aggressively pushing forward, and for which our U Group was one of the main investors, has unfortunately, just yesterday, following an emergency risk assessment and my final decision, formally decided to completely withdraw all investment intentions from the project. The reason is simple. We believe that a partner who can't even manage their own family, who is easily blinded by personal feelings, influencing their business judgment, is extremely unreliable and extremely dangerous. Looking at Sebastian's handsome face, now twisted and deformed by shock, anger, and disbelief, I felt a wave of unprecedented, unrestrained joy. Sebastian, this is just the beginning. Everything you owe me, everything you owe my mother, everything you owe the U family, I will collect it all, with interest. This fundamental upheaval is just beginning. In the oppressive meeting room of the law firm, I calmly signed my name on the pre-prepared, clearly worded divorce agreement. $100 million in cash compensation, plus 3 fully furnished, mortgage-free apartments in prime downtown locations, all explicitly transferred to my, Alara's personal name. In my eyes, these were nothing more than what I deserved, a fraction of the iceberg that I had earned over the past 6 years, with my youth, my forbearance, and my intelligence. They were both the economic compensation from the Chun family for me, giving up custody rights, and the breakup fee for my commercial marriage, with Sebastian, a marriage based on mutual benefit. It seemed that I had emerged victorious, having received an astonishingly high breakup fee, and walked away elegantly. But only I knew in my heart what I had given up was far more than what met the eye. I gave up a decaying, nauseating marital relationship, a heart that had once given sincerely but was now riddled with holes, and what I had once cherished above all else, my only son, Owen. But these sacrifices were worth it. In exchange for complete freedom, to be able to pursue my own career and life without restraint, to be able to seek justice for my ill-fated mother. When Owen broke free from the nanny's arms, rushed towards me crying heart-wrenchingly, hugged my legs tightly, and begged me over and over again in his childish, tear-filled voice, "Mommy, Mommy, don't you want me anymore? Owen will be very good from now on. Owen won't make Mommy angry anymore. Owen won't let that bad auntie hold me anymore. Mommy, don't go. Don't leave Owen." Wah. His warm, salty tears dripped through the thin silk of my trousers, drop by drop, onto my skin, bringing a scorching, almost burning pain. At that moment, my heart felt as if it were being kneaded and torn apart by an invisible hand, the pain almost taking my breath away. After all, he was a part of me. After all, he was the child I carried for 10 months and painstakingly brought into this world. What mother could truly harden her heart and abandon her own flesh and blood? But I had to be ruthless. In order for my long-term plans to be implemented smoothly, in order to prevent Sebastian and Cora from seizing any of my weaknesses, in order for me to be reborn, I had to be more cold-blooded than anyone else at this moment. I gritted my teeth, forcing myself to harden my already shattered heart, and one by one, forcefully, pried open Owen's frail little fingers that were clinging tightly to my trouser leg. Owen let go. My voice was so calm that it sounded foreign and frightening even to myself. "From today onwards, listen to your father, do as he says and stop being so willful." Then, under the gaze of my son's tear-filled, desperate, and disbelieving eyes, I turned my back to the two men and woman behind me, their faces showing different emotions, and left them with one last sentence. "Sebastian, Cora, congratulations. May you live a long and happy life together. I'm tired, I don't want to keep acting for you anymore." Before my voice faded, I had already resolutely turned and strode out of that suffocating meeting room. The triumphant, yet slightly uneasy smile on Cora's face was particularly jarring. And Sebastian, from beginning to end, sat there silently, his gaze fixed on my back, filled with a complexity of emotions. Incomprehension, anger, annoyance, and perhaps even a hint of something he himself had not yet noticed. Bewilderment and loss? Let them think what they want. As for the so-called leaving with nothing, that was just a smokescreen that I had carefully planned and intentionally released to the outside world. My legal team had already secretly started working on it half a year ago, when Cora first returned to the country. Sebastian and Cora, including my money-grabbing father, Victor, probably thought that the money and property I received were a generous compensation from the Chin family for me being sensible and voluntarily withdrawing. How would they know that the so-called compensation was mostly the legitimate appreciation of my premarital personal assets, and the profits I had secretly made from various investments over the past 6 years, using my connections and judgment as Mrs. Sebastian. These had already been firmly and securely held in my own hands through various legal and hidden financial means. More importantly, I was also secretly and gradually, through legal channels, recovering the original shares and core industries of the U Group that my mother had been illegally seized and transferred by Victor. Things that originally should have belonged entirely to my mother and me. Sebastian thought he had finally gotten rid of a calculating, no longer sensible and obedient burden, and could finally live happily ever after with his white moonlight. Little did he know that he had lost not only a capable assistant and partner, who could manage the home front perfectly and allow him to fight without worries in the business world, but also a woman who had once sincerely loved and admired him, only to be pushed away by his own hands. They always fail to cherish what they have when they have it, and only begin to regret it when they have completely lost it. But unfortunately, there is no medicine for regret in this world. By then it will be too late. After leaving the Chen family, and shedding the heavy and humiliating shackles of Mrs. Sebastian, I didn't give myself too much time to wallow in self-pity. As soon as the so-called 100 million in compensation and 3 apartments arrived, I immediately and decisively invested the majority of it in a completely new field, creating my own independent fashion design brand. I had already thought of the brand's name, Proverbs, taking both the yan, words, from my name Alara, and the jun, admonishment, representing truth. I wanted my designs to be not only beautiful clothes, but also to speak for independent women struggling in the shackles of the world, giving them the strength and courage to pursue a life that truly belonged to them. In the early stages of starting a business, everything started from scratch, and the difficulties and challenges were far greater than I imagined. Cash flow, team building, supply chain development, market promotion. Each of these could make anyone's head spin. But I was prepared. The business operations experience I had learned by observation and experience in the Yu family over the years, and the network of contacts and the precise grasp of the aesthetic tastes of the upper class that I had accumulated while navigating various high-end social occasions as Mrs. Sebastian, were not wasted. I knew very well that to strike iron, one must be strong themselves. I chose a creative park with relatively low rent but convenient transportation as the location for my studio, and personally participated in every design link, from the selection of fabrics and the adjustment of patterns to the control of craftsmanship, striving for perfection. My design philosophy emphasized simplicity and elegance, focusing on the fluency of lines and the precision of tailoring, pursuing an effortless chic feel. At the same time, I also cleverly combined the restraint and subtlety of Eastern culture with the uninhibited freedom of Western modern aesthetics, striving to find a perfect balance between classic and innovation. I named Proverbs' first series Emergence, inspired by the process of a butterfly breaking free from its cocoon and transforming into a butterfly. It mainly featured classic colors such as black, white, gray, and gold, and emphasized the structure and power of clothing, and was deeply loved by urban professional women who pursued independence, confidence, and thoughtfulness. Unexpectedly, the Emergence series caused a sensation within a small circle as soon as it was launched. The word-of-mouth effect spread rapidly, and orders came flying in like snowflakes. Just as the Proverbs studio was gradually getting on track and was very busy, a young man named Felix accidentally walked into my life and into my business plan. He approached me at a small exhibition of independent designers' works. At that time, he had just graduated from a top design school abroad and returned to China. He was talented and had an impressive resume, but he unexpectedly proposed to join my fledgling and unknown Proverbs studio as a simple photographer and design assistant. CEO Alara. He stood in front of me, tall and straight, his eyes clear and firm, his tone carrying the unique stubbornness and enthusiasm of a young man. I have seen all the designs in your Emergence series, and I have also studied your brand's philosophy. I agree with it very much and I admire it. I believe Proverbs has unlimited potential. I hope to have the opportunity to create this future with you. I could see in his clear eyes a pure love for design, and a sincere appreciation and recognition for my brand and me personally. I was not someone who easily trusted others, especially after experiencing Sebastian's betrayal and Cora's scheming. But Felix's sincerity and talent moved me. I made an exception and hired him. As it turned out, my decision was incredibly correct. Felix not only had an extremely high talent for photography and visual presentation, always being able to accurately capture the most core soul and the intended artistic conception of each of my designs, but also his understanding of design and his grasp of market trends often brought me unexpected inspiration and surprises. More importantly, he was a thoughtful person who knew how to respect and care for others. He would always silently hand me a cup of hot tea at just the right temperature when I was feeling anxious and tired due to work pressure, or offer a constructive suggestion at just the right time when I was racking my brains over a design detail. He never said much and never overstepped his boundaries, but silently supported me and accompanied Proverbs in its growth in his own way. CEO Alara, this is the latest season's trend color report. I think there are a few Pantone colors in it that are very consistent with the rebirth theme we want to express next season. CEO Alara, you were up late again last night, weren't you? I brought you breakfast. It's your favorite low-sugar oatmeal porridge and whole wheat sandwich. CEO Alara, the factory just reported that there's a small problem with the dyeing of the fabric. I've already communicated with them about a preliminary solution. What do you think? With the addition of Felix, this capable assistant, the ship Proverbs which had just set sail, seemed to have been equipped with a more powerful engine, riding the wind and waves, and developing rapidly. Of course, my small actions were also quickly relayed to my good-for-nothing father Victor's ears. In his opinion, I, the daughter who had been kicked out by the Chun family, wasn't properly keeping my tail between my legs and living quietly, but instead was showing my face in public and running some kind of low-class workshop, which was simply a disgrace to the Yu family. He stormed into my Proverbs studio in a fit of rage. That day, I was discussing the runway design plan for the next season's new product launch with Felix when Victor, with his newly promoted, supposedly distant relative of his good-for-nothing assistant, burst in aggressively. Regardless of the fact that there were other employees present in the studio, he pointed his finger at my nose and began to shout, "Alara, you shameless, unfilial daughter. Aren't you ashamed enough? You wouldn't be the young mistress of the Chun family, you were divorced with nothing and kicked out the door. Yet you still have the face to open this kind of shoddy little tailor shop outside. The face of our Yu family has been completely lost by you, this spendthrift daughter." His saliva flew everywhere, and his voice was so loud that the entire building could hear him. I had Felix take the other employees to take a break. Then, I calmly poured myself a cup of Wui de Hongpo tea that Felix treasured, took a slow sip, and then raised my eyelids to look at him with a sarcastic smile. "Dad, has your eyesight been failing you lately, or is your brain just not sharp enough to keep up with the times?" I slowly pulled out 2 prepared documents from my desk drawer, and lightly tossed them onto the expensive rosewood tea table in front of him, making a crisp sound. "This is the final judgment on the ownership of those core Yushur Group shares, and some real estate that Mom vaguely transferred to you back then. After years of tireless effort and evidence collection by my legal team, the court has formally ruled that your so-called nominee holding and transfer activities at that time involved serious fraud and coercion, and are therefore invalid. These assets have now, completely legally and compliantly, returned to my name and my mother's trust fund account." I clearly saw Victor's face, which had been flushed with anger, turn ashen white in an instant when he heard this. He widened his eyes in disbelief, pointing at me with a trembling finger, his lips quivering, but unable to utter a word. I ignored him and continued to introduce the second document in an orderly manner. "As for this one, it's the detailed financial report for the last quarter and the 3-year business development plan for my unimpressive little tailoring shop. Maxim. Of course, the data might be a bit complicated. I'm afraid it will make your old eyes tired. To put it simply, Maxim's current profitability and market prospects are perhaps, well, just perhaps a little bit better than those sunset industry subsidiaries of the Yushur Group that you're still struggling to keep afloat with bank loans. Probably just enough to allow all employees to go on several luxury overseas team-building trips every year, and give out over 10 months' worth of year-end bonuses." Victor stared intently at the 2 documents, as if trying to burn holes in them with his gaze. His breathing became increasingly rapid, his chest heaving violently. Finally, he abruptly raised his head, his eyes filled with shock, anger, and a hint of barely perceptible fear. "You unfilial daughter. You've been plotting against me all along." I put down my teacup, slowly stood up, and looked down at his flustered and helpless state, a cold and gratified smile blooming on my lips. "Dad, how can you call it plotting? Isn't your daughter just learning from your teachings, learning to always have several backup plans for herself and strive for more benefits? You taught me that the business world is a battlefield, and one must be ruthless to succeed. Now your daughter is just applying those truths you taught me in a practical way. Shouldn't you be proud and pleased with your daughter's accomplishments and progress?" He was choked speechless by my barbed and subtle words, and could only stare at me with bloodshot eyes, as if he wanted to devour me alive. Satisfying. So satisfying. "Victor, back then, how ruthlessly you forced me for your own benefit. How cruelly you treated my mother. Today, I will make you taste the feeling of being betrayed by your closest relative, schemed against by the person you trust the most, and watching everything you worked so hard to build crumble, yet being powerless to do anything about it. And this is just the beginning. Those debts you owe my mother in blood and tears, I will collect them all, with interest, from you." While I was vigorously building my own business empire and gradually settling accounts with my cheap old man, my ex-husband Sebastian and his white moonlight Cora, who had painstakingly clawed her way to the top, began their mutual love, envied by all married. Although only engaged, Cora already considers herself Mrs. Chin New Life. Not long after I left the Chin family, Sebastian couldn't wait to propose to Cora and publicly announce their engagement to the media. For a time, the headlines of major media outlets in Haicheng were occupied by this true love couple, who were a classic example of hardship rewarded and lovers finally becoming husband and wife. Sebastian in the photos was still handsome and refined, but there seemed to be a trace less sharpness and a touch more imperceptible fatigue between his brows. Cora, next to him, was beaming, riding high on her success. The custom-made pink diamond engagement ring on her hand, said to be worth millions, sparkled under the flashbulbs, hurting people's eyes. I just scoffed at those nauseating reports and sweet photos. Keep acting, keep acting. I'd like to see how long this love conquers all charade can last for you two perfect matches. Sure enough, without me, the obstacle and shrewd schemer, and shield in their eyes, their new life did not live happily ever after like in fairy tales. On the contrary, it was a complete mess, with one problem after another. Cora had no idea how to be a qualified matriarch of a wealthy family, let alone assist Sebastian in managing the vast Chin group. Before, I meticulously navigated the complex interpersonal relationships within the Chin family, managing everything inside and out smoothly, allowing her to rest easy, only responsible for being beautiful and secretly having an affair with Sebastian, enjoying the excitement and privileges of being a secret lover. Now, she rightfully sat on the throne of Chin family's future mistress, but she made a complete mess of everything. At the company, she recklessly interfered in the group's affairs, relying on Sebastian's favor. As an art student who knew nothing about business operations, she insisted on bossing around experienced professional managers, promoting some sycophants with no ability based on her personal preferences and so-called artistic intuition, while offending the veterans and important officials who had truly contributed to the Chin group and offered insightful advice. As a result, several of the Chin group's core projects were delayed and stalled due to her amateur guidance and reckless decisions, causing huge economic losses. An important partner who had previously had a deep cooperation with the Chin group later met me at a business cocktail party, and couldn't help but complain to me in private. "Oh, CEO Alara, you don't know. Ever since you left the Chin family, cooperating with the Chin group now is a nightmare. That new Miss Cora is just a pretty face with no substance. She doesn't understand anything, but she loves to give blind directions. She almost completely ruined a key project worth tens of millions of dollars due to her amateur decision. It was more reliable when you were in charge of the Chen family. You had a keen eye and decisive style. We all admired you. And in the Chen family's luxurious villa, Cora also made a mess of the life. She simply couldn't be bothered to take care of the tedious household chores, nor could she learn how to properly handle the complex personal relationships of the Chen family. She only cared about her own enjoyment, today making appointments with her so-called socialite girlfriends for the best SBA beauty treatments, tomorrow flying to Paris and London to attend Fashion Week runway parties, and the day after tomorrow impulsively holding luxurious private-themed cocktail parties at home. Her care for Owen, her nominal stepson, was only superficial, even perfunctory, and full of impatience. She hired 7 or 8 baby nurses and tutors who were said to be experienced and dumped the child on them like a burden. But she knew nothing about how many meals a day the child ate, what he was allergic to, or what bedtime stories he liked to hear. Sometimes Owen wanted to be close to her, clingy, and called her Mommy Cora, wanting her to play with him for a while, but she would frown impatiently, disliking the child's noise and disturbing her facial mask or watching Korean dramas. Owen, who had been trained by me to have the beginnings of a little gentleman, became more and more sensitive, shy, and even timid under her free-range care. Sebastian, the seemingly infinitely successful group president, began to look visibly haggard and tired. Every day when he returned home, he was no longer greeted by a well-ordered and cozy haven, but by a battlefield that had been turned upside down by Cora. He worked longer and longer hours, came home later and later, and sometimes preferred to sleep in the company's lounge rather than return to the home he once cherished. But even so, he continued to stubbornly save face and suffer, putting on a strong front about their unwavering love to the outside world. However, in the middle of the night when he faced the empty half of the bed, or on some late-night return from a social engagement, When he saw the desk in the study that I used to use, now covered with dust, would he occasionally, unconsciously, think of the benefits of me, Elara, when I was still in the Chen family? For example, I would remember all his dietary preferences and living habits. I would prepare hangover honey water and light snacks for him when he worked late into the night. I would quietly stay by his side and gently massage his temples when he couldn't sleep due to work stress. I could even provide some accurate and unique insights and suggestions on those headache-inducing business decisions. These were all things that Cora, who was only good at acting cute, acting spoiled, and crying, could never give him. Assistants, friends, and even some of the Chen family's longtime associates also began to mention me more and more to him. Intentionally or unintentionally, mentioning the great success of the Maxim brand that I founded, and how radiant and successful I was in the fashion and business world. President Chen, CEO Elara, is on the cover of the latest issue of Vogue. TSK, Maxim's Rebirth series is so well designed. I heard that it's hard to find even one piece internationally. Hey Sebastian, your ex-wife Elara is really something now. I heard that she was the only Chinese designer representative invited to that top designer dinner, held in Paris a few days ago. She was on equal footing with those international big shots, chatting and laughing. Her aura, TSK, it's just amazing. Sebastian, it's not that I'm nagging, but you were a little too impulsive back then, weren't you? That child, Qingyan, may not have come from a noble family, but that character and ability are not comparable to ordinary women. Look at now, what can the Meng girl do besides stirring up trouble? These intentional or unintentional comparisons and discussions were like tiny needles, constantly pricking Sebastian's heart, which may have already begun to regret. Human thoughts are so strange. When you have something, you always take it for granted, even dismiss it. But once you completely lose it, those beautiful things that you once ignored will replay clearly in your mind like slow-motion scenes from a movie, turning into unattainable regrets and torments. And the real cracks came from Owen. Children are the most sensitive. They can clearly feel who is truly good to them and who is hypocritical. Cora's perfunctoriness and impatience towards Owen were all seen and remembered by Owen. He began to miss me more and more often, missing my gentle storytelling while hugging him, missing the loving breakfasts I made for him by hand, missing my pleased smile because of his little progress. Once, while Cora and her girlfriends from her Paris connection were having a blast at a pool party in the downstairs living room, he secretly ran to the study alone and called me on the house phone. The moment the call connected, I heard his crying, timid little voice. "Mommy. Is that Mommy? I miss you. Mommy." My heart clenched violently, and I almost burst into tears on the spot. "Owen, it's Mommy." I tried to keep my voice calm. "What's wrong? What happened?" "Mommy, Aunt Cora. She won't let me eat ice cream. She also said I'm a burden. She said I disturbed her rest. I know she secretly told Aunt Lee, the maid, behind my back. Mommy, doesn't Aunt Cora like me? She's so fierce. Well, when can you come back to see me, Mommy? I don't want to be with her." The child's intermittent sobbing, every word, struck heavily on my heart. That Cora! How dare she treat my son like this? I was about to comfort Owen and say some harsh words to warn that woman when Cora's sharp, ear-piercing voice suddenly came from the other end of the phone. Obviously she had discovered that Owen was secretly calling me. "Owen, what are you doing? Who told you to touch the phone? You dare to complain to your shameless mother, is that it? Come here right now." Then there was a chaotic struggle, and Owen's more terrified cries. Then the phone was snatched away by Cora, and she roared hysterically at the microphone. "Elara, you lingering ghost. What are you up to? Can't you stand to see me and Jingchuan happy? Are you trying to deliberately sow discord between me and Owen? Let me tell you, don't waste your time. Jingchuan is my man now. Owen will only recognize me as his mother from now on. Don't you dare try to ruin our happiness." Her jealous and insecure, shrew-like voice was truly grating and ridiculous. I just said to her calmly, in an almost pitying tone, "Ms. Cora, are you so insecure about yourself? Or is your so-called happiness so fragile that it needs to be maintained by snatching and bluster?" After saying that, without waiting for her to explode again, I hung up the phone directly. A messy life, as expected, spread like a plague, faster and more violently than I had imagined. Cora, Sebastian, enjoy the happiness you chose for yourselves. The real show is yet to come. The real turning point, which was also the fuse for the complete outbreak of conflict, happened on a weekend afternoon with sunshine that was almost blinding. Owen had been cooped up at home for several days, because he had a cold and fever a few days ago. That day, he was much better and pestered Cora to go out and play. Cora was busy video chatting with some so-called artist friends she had met in Paris, discussing some postmodern deconstructionism that I couldn't even understand, and she didn't bother to pay attention to him at all. After perfunctorily saying a few words impatiently, she sent Owen to the huge outdoor pool in the backyard of the villa to play with a toy water gun, and specifically instructed Aunt Lee, the nanny responsible for looking after Owen, to keep an eye on young Master Owen at all times. As it turned out, Aunt Lee had just been called to the kitchen by Zhang Bo, who was in charge of the garden, to help carry a box of imported fruits that had just been delivered, so she left for only 5 minutes. And Cora, wearing an exaggerated pair of sunglasses that covered half of her face, comfortably lay under the luxurious parasol by the pool, applying her sky-high priced luxurious facial mask airshipped from Switzerland, while video chatting with her plastic socialite girlfriends on a tablet, gleefully showing off the latest diamond necklace that Sebastian had just given her a few days ago, said to be a limited edition of only 10 pieces worldwide. The tragedy happened in this moment of unattended and unnoticed. With a plop sound, the not-so-loud splash of water was easily drowned out by the noisy music playing by the pool and the women's chattering and laughter. It was Owen, chasing a toy rubber duck that had accidentally fallen into the pool, who slipped and lost his balance, falling into the deep end. He was so small, he didn't know how to swim at all, and the cold pool water instantly submerged his small body. He flailed wildly in the water in terror, choking on several mouthfuls of bitter and astringent pool water, his little face turning red. At first, he could make some weak cries for help, but soon, the sound became smaller and smaller, and his consciousness gradually blurred. It wasn't until a few minutes later, when Cora finished her group chat, took off her headphones with satisfaction, and was about to get up and go back to her room for a beauty nap, that she inadvertently caught sight of the small figure floating in the center of the pool, almost no longer struggling. She was stunned at first, her mind went blank, and then she realized what had happened. She jumped up from the recliner in fright, and the facial mask fell comically to the ground, making a scream that was enough to pierce the eardrum. But chillingly, her first reaction was not to immediately jump into the water to save him, although she herself may not know how to swim, nor to shout for others to come and help, but subconsciously, like a ghostly apparition, to quickly scan around, seemingly panicking to confirm whether that scene had been captured by nearby servants or security cameras. Those few seconds of hesitation and selfish calculation were agonizing for Owen, who was struggling for his life in the water. When she finally came to her senses, screamed and called the gardener who happened to be passing by and Aunt Lee who hurried back, and frantically pulled Owen, who was already blue and almost breathless, from the pool. The child had fallen into a deep coma. After receiving the call, Sebastian rushed out of the ongoing board meeting like a madman, ran all the red lights, and drove to the hospital as fast as possible. Outside the emergency room, the air was heavy enough to suffocate people. Owen's brain was severely oxygen deprived due to prolonged drowning, and although he was temporarily out of danger, he continued to run a high fever and remained unconscious. His condition was very critical. Sebastian's eyes were bloodshot, his face was ashen, and he exuded a terrifying air of violence, sitting on the cold hallway bench, like a volcano that could erupt at any moment. Cora, on the other hand, was trembling with fear, crying and sobbing, incoherently trying to explain the accidental course of events, clearing herself of all responsibility, and constantly emphasizing that she was only momentarily negligent, and never expected such a thing to happen. The doctor came out several times to issue critical condition notices, telling them to prepare for the worst. In his coma, Owen kept murmuring intermittently, unclearly, his voice so weak that it seemed like it could disappear at any moment. "Mommy. Mommy, save me. It's so cold. It's so dark. I'm so scared. Aunt Cora. It's her. She's a bad person. Mommy." Sebastian's heart was being branded by a red-hot iron, or being repeatedly sliced by countless sharp knives. The pain was so intense that he could hardly breathe. He suddenly stood up, ignoring Cora's terrified screams and pulls. His face contorted as he rushed out of the hospital, heading straight back to the Chen family villa. He immediately ordered the staff to retrieve all the blind spot-free surveillance footage from the pool area. When he saw, through the high-definition surveillance footage, frame by frame, with utmost clarity, Cora's fatal, selfish seconds of hesitation and indecision after discovering Owen had fallen into the water. When he saw her panicked yet subconsciously calculating an ugly face. And when he saw how, afterward, she frantically tried to get Aunt Lee, who had rushed to help, to give false testimony for her, trying to cover up the truth and shirk responsibility. Sebastian froze completely, as if struck by lightning. He felt a bone-chilling coldness shoot straight from the soles of his feet to the top of his head. Anger, disappointment, disgust, being deceived, being betrayed. Countless complex and intense emotions overwhelmed him like a tsunami. So, the white moonlight he had always cherished and protected, whom he thought was pure, kind, and pitiful, was actually a venomous, selfish, and cold-blooded woman. So those so-called gentle considerations, those so-called understanding and empathy, those so-called innocence, were all illusions she had meticulously crafted. All were despicable means she used to deceive him, exploit him, and achieve her goals step by step. And he, Sebastian, had been played like a complete fool, used like a puppet in her hands. For her sake he had hurt his wife who truly loved him, neglected his innocent biological son, and even almost killed his child. Even more horrifying was that, after seeing Cora's downfall, the servants mustered their courage and, speaking all at once, tearfully reported to him many truths he had been kept in the dark about, such as how Cora had mistreated Owen behind his back, skimping on the child's food and toys, using emotional abuse, and even ignoring him when he was sick, only caring about her own enjoyment. Sebastian painfully closed his eyes, covered his face with his hands, and let out a beast-like, despairing groan. His personal assistant, trembling, carefully reminded him, Mr. Ching, about Little Master Owen's current situation. Should we notify Ms. Ilera? After all, she is Little Master Owen's biological mother. Sebastian seemed to have had all his strength drained from him in an instant. He collapsed dejectedly onto the expensive leather sofa, his eyes bloodshot, his voice hoarse and unrecognizable. After a long silence, he squeezed out a few words through his teeth. Call her. At that time, I had just finished the Maxim brand's autumn and winter new product launch in Milan. The show was a resounding success and widely praised by the industry. Backstage, champagne bubbles sparkled under the chandeliers, flowers and applause rose and fell, reporters, models, and designers bustled about. The air was filled with the joy of success and the passion of creation, a scene of bustling excitement. Felix, as always, stood by my side, graciously blocking the media reporters and dignitaries who were constantly surging forward, wanting to interview and congratulate me. Ilera, congratulations. You've created another amazing miracle. The future of Maxim is truly limitless. His clear eyes sparkled with sincere admiration and undisguised appreciation. Just then, my personal cell phone rang abruptly. The screen displayed an unfamiliar domestic number, with its location in High City. I instinctively frowned, feeling a bad premonition. I went to a relatively quiet corner of the lounge area and pressed the answer button. On the other end of the phone, Sebastian's familiar voice, but with heavy fatigue and despair, immediately came through, so hoarse that I almost couldn't recognize him. Ilera. It's me, Sebastian. Please, you come back quickly. Owen. Our son Owen. He's dying. Listening to his incoherent, almost broken-down narration, my heart felt like it was being repeatedly cut with the dullest knife, instantly sinking to the bottom. A sharp, intense pain made my vision blur, and I almost couldn't stand. Owen. My son. My Owen. But I forced myself to maintain the last shred of reason and calmness. Although my voice trembled slightly with shock and worry, I still tried to maintain a superficial detachment and composure. Sebastian, speak slowly. What exactly happened? Send me the address, and I'll go back immediately. On the other end of the phone was Sebastian's tearful voice, filled with regret and entreaty. Ilera. I know I was a bastard before. I'm sorry for what I did to you. I was blind, I let you down. But Owen is still so young. He's innocent. He keeps calling for you. He says he wants his mother. Elara. I'm begging you. Come back and see him, please. As long as you're willing to come back. I'll agree to anything. Remarriage is fine. Give you all the property is fine. As long as you can save Owen. Address. My voice instantly became cold and sharp, without a single unnecessary word. Immediately send me the hospital address and ward number where Owen is. Also, immediately contact the private family doctor team I previously designated for Owen, and have them rush there for a consultation as quickly as possible. As for other matters, we'll talk after I arrive. Hanging up the phone, I didn't even have time to say hello to Felix and the rest of the team. I immediately grabbed my coat and handbag and rushed out of the backstage area at the fastest speed. Felix seemed to have noticed the seriousness of the situation and immediately followed, decisively arranging the nearest private plane to High City for me, and handled all the formalities for my early departure in the shortest possible time. Elara, don't worry too much. Owen will be all right, he's a lucky child. He squeezed my hand tightly, his eyes full of determination and strength. I'll handle the follow-up matters here. If you need anything in High City, call me anytime. I nodded gratefully, without saying another word, and turned to board the plane to High City. Cora, Sebastian, wait for me to return. If anything happens to my Owen, I, Elara, swear, I will never let you go. I will make you pay the most painful price for your stupidity and malice. Blood debts must be paid in blood. By the time my private plane made an emergency landing at High City International Airport, it was completely dark. Regardless of the fatigue of the journey, as soon as I got off the plane, I went straight to the private hospital where Owen was located. Outside the ICU ward, the long, suffocatingly quiet corridor was filled with the heavy smell of disinfectant. Sebastian sat dejectedly on the cold metal bench, like a lost and soulless statue. His once meticulous custom suit was now wrinkled and unsightly, his carefully styled hair was messy, his chin was covered with blue stubble, and his eyes were filled with terrifying bloodshot, making him look more haggard and miserable than he sounded on the phone, as if he had aged 10 years in an instant. And not far from him, Cora stood there weeping, her makeup smeared all over her face, with several clear red palm prints still visible, obviously having just been severely punished by Sebastian in his rage. As soon as she saw me appear, her eyes immediately looked like she had seen a ghost, filled with terror and resentment, but she didn't dare to come up and provoke me as arrogantly as she used to. I didn't even bother to look at her, and went straight to Sebastian, my voice as cold as ice. Where's Owen? What's his condition now? Sebastian suddenly raised his head and saw me. His empty, lifeless eyes suddenly erupted with a light that was too complex to describe, with shock, regret, guilt, but more than anything, a frenzied joy and hope, like grasping at a life-saving straw. He jumped up from the chair with a whoosh, almost stumbling and falling to the ground because the movement was too violent. Elara. Elara, you're finally here. You're finally willing to come back. His voice was hoarse as he staggered towards me, wanting to grab my arm, his tone full of humble entreaty and helpless pleading. Elara, Owen. He won't wake up. The doctor says. The doctor says his will to live is very weak. He keeps calling for you. Go and see him. Talk to him. He will definitely listen to you. Let him wake up, please. As long as he can wake up. I promise you anything. I beg you, Elara. Looking at his current wretched appearance, so humble to the point of being in the dust, crying and begging, and thinking about his previous cold and domineering attitude towards me, I felt no joy, only an unspeakable absurdity and sadness. If I had known this would happen, why did I do it in the first place? I shook off his hand that was grabbing my arm, my voice devoid of any warmth. Sebastian, put away your crocodile tears. Now is not the time for you to put on a show of deep affection and repentance. Where's Owen's family doctor team? Have they arrived? What's the consultation result? Just then, the ICU door suddenly opened, and a doctor wearing a white coat and a mask walked out with a solemn expression. It was Dr. Wallace, the head of Owen's private doctor team and a top pediatric intensive care expert in the country. I had hired him at a high salary for Owen long ago, just in case. CEO Alara, you've arrived. Dr. Wallace nodded when he saw me, his expression serious. Little Master Owen's condition is very worrying. He was submerged for too long, leading to severe brain hypoxia and multiple organ damage. Although we have done our best to rescue him and temporarily maintained his vital signs, he has not shown any signs of waking up. Currently, the chances of him waking up on his own are very slim. We suggest you prepare for the worst as soon as possible. With a boom, I felt like something had exploded in my head. The sky spun, my vision blurred, and I almost couldn't stand. Prepare for the worst. No. Impossible. My Owen, he's still so young. His life hasn't even really begun. How could it just? Dr. Wallace, I don't care what methods you use. How much money? I just want my son to live. As long as he can wake up. I grabbed Dr. Wallace's arm tightly, my nails digging deep into his skin because of the force, my voice distorted by extreme fear and anger. You are top experts. There must be a way. Right? Dr. Wallace shook his head helplessly and sighed. CEO Alara, please calm down. Medicine is not omnipotent. Little Master Owen. His only hope now may be that with the call and companionship of his loved ones, especially his most dependent biological mother, he can rekindle his own will to live. I understood. I took a deep breath and forced myself to calm down from the extreme grief and panic. Now is not the time for me to be weak and desperate. My Owen is still waiting for me to save him. I put on a sterile gown and, led by a nurse, walked step by step, with difficulty, into the ICU ward filled with cold instruments and the smell of medicine. On the bed, my once lively and mischievous son was lying there quietly, his small body covered with various tubes, his face wearing an oxygen mask, his complexion as pale as a transparent piece of paper, lifeless. On the monitor, the line representing his heartbeat rose and fell weakly and slowly, as if it could turn into a straight line at any time. My tears could no longer be controlled and rolled down like broken beads. I gently walked to the bed and, trembling, reached out and carefully held Owen's cold little hand, my voice broken by sobs. Owen. Owen. It's Mommy. Mommy's here to see you. Can you hear me? Owen, open your eyes and look at Mommy, okay? Mommy knows you're the best. You wouldn't bear to leave Mommy alone. Would you? Owen, Mommy was too strict with you before. Mommy will never force you to learn things you don't like again. Mommy will take you to the amusement park. Take you to ride the carousel. Take you to eat your favorite rainbow candy. Oh. Owen. As long as you wake up. Mommy will promise you anything. Mommy will stay with you every day from now on. I'll never leave you again. Please. Wake up. Look at Mommy. Again and again, I called his name, telling him my longing and apology, with all the gentleness and love I could muster, in his ear. I didn't know how much time had passed, and I didn't know how much I had said, until my throat was completely hoarse and my tears had long since dried up. I don't know if my calls had really worked, or if a miracle had really happened. Just when I was almost about to give up in despair, I faintly felt that the cold little hand that I was holding tightly in my palm seemed to move slightly. My heart jumped. Immediately afterward, on the monitor, the previously flat and weak heartbeat curve began to show some small but clear fluctuations. Doctor. I was so excited that I was incoherent, my voice trembling. Oh, and he reacted. His hand moved. His heartbeat also changed. Dr. Wallace and several doctors immediately rushed in and quickly performed a series of examinations on Owen. A few minutes later, Dr. Wallace took off his stethoscope, a relieved and joyful smile on his face. CEO Alara. A miracle. This is truly a miracle. Little Master Owen, he really made it. His vital signs are gradually returning to stability. His consciousness is also beginning to show signs of waking up. He's saved. He's really saved. At that moment, all the fear, sadness, anger, and despair that had been pressing down on me instantly turned into a huge, overwhelming joy after surviving a disaster. I could no longer hold on, my legs went weak, and I collapsed onto the cold floor, crying loudly. My Owen. My son. He's finally back. He didn't abandon me. Outside the ward, Sebastian, who had been waiting there, trembled with excitement and burst into tears of joy after hearing this wonderful news. Like a prodigal son who had returned, he rushed to me regardless of everything and knelt heavily at my feet with a thump, hugging my legs, crying and confessing incoherently, "Elara, thank you. Thank you for saving Owen. And thank you for giving me a chance to atone. Elara, I'm sorry for what I did to you. I'm not human. I'm a bastard. I was blind and heartless. I shouldn't have believed that venomous woman. Shouldn't have hurt you and Owen like that. Elara, as long as you're willing to forgive me, as long as you're willing to give me a chance, I swear, I will definitely turn over a new leaf. I'll transfer all the Chun family's assets to your name. I'll tear Cora, that bitch, into pieces. I'll rip out my heart and show it to you. I only ask you to never leave me and Owen again. Oh, let's remarry. Elara, please, give me one more chance. I can't live without you. Owen can't live without you either. This family can't live without you. He cried like a child, his face covered in snot and tears, holding my legs and refusing to let go. And at this moment, Cora, whose face was twisted with jealousy and resentment, had already been dragged out of the hospital mercilessly by Chun family bodyguards, who had been alerted by the news, like dragging a dead dog. As she was being dragged away, she was still screaming and cursing hysterically, her voice shrill and piercing. Elara, you bitch. Don't be so smug. Even if you saved that little bastard, so what? Sebastian will see through your true colors sooner or later. The one he loves is me. It will always be me. You can forget about taking him away. I won't let you go. I won't let you go even as a ghost. How pathetic and laughable. I didn't even bother to look at her again, and coldly ordered the bodyguards controlling her. Call the police. Attempted murder, malicious injury, defamation. Report all the good deeds she's done over the years, one by one clearly. I want to see what kind of good, and the law will give her. As for Sebastian, I looked down, coldly watching the man kneeling at my feet, crying his heart out, a miserable mess. This is the man I once loved. This is the husband I once thought I could entrust my life to? I was truly blind. I slowly raised my foot and, without any mercy, kicked his hands, which were desperately clinging to my leg, away. My voice was icy and piercing, devoid of any emotion. Sebastian, put away your cheap tears and belated repentance. It's too late. Remarry? Do you think I, Elara, would still fancy a fickle, indecisive, and naive man like you? Do you think there's any chance of us going back to the past after you hurt me, schemed against me, and almost killed my own son for that cheap white moonlight? All you wanted was a capable wife who could manage the family well, leaving you with no worries, a gentle haven to comfort and support you when you're tired, and a powerful assistant to offer advice and strategies for your career. You never loved Elara, the person. You only loved the role that met all your perfect wife criteria. As for atonement, you owe me a debt you can never repay. You owe Owen a debt you can never make up for. From the moment you chose to believe Cora, chose to hurt me and Owen for her sake, you, Sebastian, were completely dead to me, Elara. The only connection between us is Owen. In the future, all matters regarding Owen's upbringing and education will be handled directly through my legal team. As for everything else, we owe each other nothing, and we have no further connection. After saying that, I ignored his face, twisted and distorted by despair and pain, turned around and walked, step by step, firmly, back into Owen's hospital room. Now my whole world is only my son. Other people, other things, are irrelevant to me. Sebastian, your regret, your late affection, are worthless to me. My life, Elara, will not be paused for a single second for a man like you. My path lies ahead, bright and brilliant. And you will live forever in endless regret and pain, atoning for your past stupidity and betrayal. Owen's health improved day by day under the careful care of me and Dr. Wallace's medical team. Although his physical functions suffered some irreversible damage due to the severe drowning incident, requiring long-term rehabilitation, he stubbornly survived and regained his usual liveliness and cheerfulness. However, after experiencing that life-and-death ordeal, Owen, who was already a bit sensitive and introverted, became even more dependent on me, almost inseparable. He always liked to hold my hand tightly or hang on me like a little koala, as if afraid that I would disappear in the next second. Looking at his clear and innocent eyes, filled with affection and attachment to me, my heart felt like it was wrapped in the warmest sunshine, incredibly soft. All the hardship, all the forbearance, all the sacrifice, became worthwhile at that moment. For my Owen, I am willing to do anything. As for Sebastian, since being ruthlessly rejected by me that day, he seemed to have lost his backbone, dispirited and devastated. He never mentioned the word remarriage in front of me again, but like a child who had done something wrong, he humbly and cautiously tried to make up for what he owed me and Owen. He almost cancelled all the social engagements and unnecessary meetings in the company, and spent most of his time accompanying Owen for rehabilitation. He would clumsily try to tell Owen fairy tales that he himself didn't understand, patiently accompany Owen to practice walking and talking again and again, and secretly prepare all kinds of novel little gifts for Owen, hiding them under Owen's pillow, just to win a happy smile from the child. His care and love for Owen were from the bottom of his heart, and I could feel it. But spilled water is hard to recover, and a broken mirror is hard to mend. Some injuries, once inflicted, can never be repaired. Between us, apart from being Owen's biological parents, jointly raising the child as the only bond, there can be no other intersection. We are already people from two different worlds. And Cora, the main culprit who caused this tragedy, finally paid the price for her viciousness and stupidity. I didn't show mercy and directly hired the country's top legal team to formally sue her for multiple charges, including attempted murder, malicious injury, and inciting defamation. In the face of overwhelming evidence, any of Cora's sophistry and denial seemed so pale and weak. In the end, she was sentenced to 15 years in prison, and all her illegal income was confiscated. That white moonlight, who had once tried so hard to climb the social ladder and become a phoenix, finally ended up with a ruined reputation and imprisoned in a miserable fate, slowly repenting for her sins in a long life behind bars. As for my good-for-nothing old man, Victor, after I completely took control of the U Group and recovered all the property that should have belonged to my mother, he was also investigated by relevant departments for a series of previous illegal operations and tax evasion, and was eventually sentenced to prison, fined a huge sum of money, completely ruined his reputation, and his old age was desolate. Truly, what goes around comes around. Everyone who had ever hurt me, schemed against me, paid the price for their actions. My life gradually returned to peace and normalcy. The Precept brand, under my careful management and Felix's capable assistance, developed better and better, not only gained a foothold in the domestic market, becoming a highly sought-after first-line high-end luxury brand, but also successfully entered the international market, opening brand flagship stores in fashion capitals such as Paris, Milan and London, and received high recognition and praise from the international fashion industry. My name, Elara, also became synonymous with independent, confident, and successful women. Felix, over the years, has been silently accompanying me, not only my most tacit partner in my career, but also the most trusted confidant in my life. He always carried a careful, selfless admiration and love for me. I know that his feelings for me have long surpassed ordinary friendship, but after experiencing that failed marriage with Sebastian, I had become indifferent to relationships and dared not easily touch them again. Perhaps, I enjoy the feeling of controlling my own life now more, free and unconstrained. Owen grew up day by day, becoming more and more sensible, and more understanding of my difficulties and good intentions in those years. He would use his own saved pocket money to choose a small gift for me on my birthday, which was not expensive but full of sincerity. When I was exhausted from work, he would learn from Felix and make me a cup of hot tea, and then say in a milky voice, "Mom, you've worked hard. Owen is grown up, and Owen will protect Mom from now on." Whenever this happened, I felt like I was the happiest mother in the world. The annual Precept Brand International New Product Launch and Charity Gala was grandly held in the banquet hall of the most luxurious 7-star hotel in Haicheng. Tonight, I was wearing a champagne-colored fishtail gown, custom-made by Felix himself, adorned with glittering diamonds and pearls, with long, slightly curled hair and exquisite makeup. Under the dazzling crystal lights, I was radiant and attracted the attention of everyone in the audience. Felix, wearing a well-tailored dark tuxedo, stood tall and graceful next to me, receiving congratulations and praise from the guests with me. He and I smiled at each other, our eyes full of understanding and trust. Just as the banquet reached its climax, when I, as the founder and chief designer of the brand, went on stage to deliver a speech, the corner of my eye inadvertently caught a familiar, but somewhat lonely figure at the entrance of the banquet hall. It was Sebastian. He came alone, without any female companion. His figure was still tall, and his face was still handsome, but there were already traces of frost on his temples, and his eyes carried a hint of weariness and vicissitudes that could not be dispelled. He was holding a bouquet of beautifully wrapped purple tulips, my favorite flower. He just stood quietly at the edge of the crowd, looking at me, confident, calm, and eloquent under the spotlight, with complicated eyes, with amazement, with regret, with blessings, and a hint of even he himself was unwilling to admit. Unwillingness and extravagant hope. And at this moment Owen, who was about to graduate from elementary school, was wearing a handsome little suit, sitting quietly in the first row of the VIP seats like a little adult, proudly looking at his mother on the stage, clapping his hands vigorously from time to time, his little face full of pride and happiness. I gave the guests under the stage a heartfelt, radiant smile. I knew that my life, Ilara's life, had just begun. All the past suffering and pain would only become the most solid stepping stones on my future path. As for those who had once let me down and hurt me, they had long been left far behind by me, and they no longer had the qualifications to become the background of my life. My world was already vast and boundless, allowing me to soar. The cage. It had long been smashed to pieces by my own hands, leaving not even scraps. And the bird that was once imprisoned had already spread its wings and flown to a broader, freer, and more wonderful distance. As for love, let it be. If I can meet a good man who truly appreciates me, respects me, and whose soul resonates with mine, I might try to open my heart again. If not, it doesn't matter. Because I already have the best son in the world, the most passionate career, and the freest life. That is enough.